If you aren't familiar with Carlyle, so we're a multinational private equity, alternative asset management and financial services firm. We've got around $276 billion in assets under management. We're pretty much, we have offices pretty much on every single continent, and we have nearly 2,000 employees. And so what we've done over the last, I believe starting in 2019, is we actually have undergone an agile transformation. The main reason that we were doing this was to really break down silos between all of our business units. So that was the background just on the Carlyle Group. And so in 2019, we actually we started an agile transformation. Main reason we decided to do this was a lot of our business segments were siloed. They were doing their own thing from a technology and from a business process perspective. And we really wanted to take advantage of those efficiencies by having people communicate and talk to each other. So with a reorganization, we actually broke down all the silos, organized into business segments that would then cross-communicate, collaborate, and work through just some of the challenges that we're seeing across the firm. The two main things that are leading to the success of our transformation have been really a holistic shift from projects to more of a product management mentality, and then also lean portfolio management. So those are really the things that we'll talk through today. So lean portfolio management and governance are going to be the two pieces that we're going to go through. So looking at lean portfolio management, as I mentioned, when we went through our transformation, looking to the keys to our success for our transformation, prior to our transformation, we really had monolithic, static projects that were, once they were approved, they just ran for a long period of time. I think 12 to 18 months. Now, after our transformation, they're more adaptive. We're doing roadmaps where we've shortened how long we're actually going to be delivering value. So we've decided that that's going to be in about 3-month increments. So that's really led us to, shifting quickly, being agile and changing with the market. And then also allowing us to really take our funding and put it into better buckets. The next piece, project-based funding. So again, when we were approving these large monolithic projects, we would allocate all the funding at the beginning, and then that was your budget that you work towards. Now we're really funding our programs and funding teams. So it's more around funding capacity. Started off project-based funding, now we're moving to more team-based funding. So we're funding our capacity and the work flows to the team. We're not creating our teams around the work. The next piece, that means that since we're funding our teams, we're making sure that our teams are long lasting. We're not just spinning up project teams for 12 months and then letting them disband. What we're doing is we're keeping our project teams together so that they can keep the institutional knowledge that they're gaining, and then really they own the product that they're making moving forward. Before we would hand off to a support team or have to allocate budget for that, now it's the team that builds it is the team that supports it. And then finally, the scope or the system implementation, that's where we were focused. So it was more on the output. Is the system live? Is the application live? Is this, have we gone live with this? And we didn't really think about outcomes. So if a system goes live, is anybody using it? So moving on, for the next slide that I would be showing is just how we're getting from our strategy down to our execution and our tactical level with our teams. So first, we're going to start at the highest level where we have our goals defined at the firm level. These are 1 to 2 year goals that we have, basically cross-cutting the entire firm. We then take those goals, break them into our individual segments. So how can our segments make a positive impact on those goals? Those get broken down into our capabilities, which are smaller, chunks of work, about 3 months is what we're saying, and that forms our roadmap. So we have all these capabilities that we map out on our roadmap, and then as the team works through the year, we're constantly reassessing those capabilities and seeing if priorities have changed, has scope changed, do we need to impact, or do we need to redo our roadmaps, or do we need to figure out and add new things to the roadmap that we didn't know about before. As we get further down past capabilities, that's when you get into the more tactical items of epics, user stories, what teams are actually working on, and breaking those into sprints, which our teams are doing. So again, there's, the slide shows that taking our objectives, then those are broken down into smaller pieces. So those would be our capabilities, and then further breaking those down into stories. So we've got really a 3-level hierarchy for how we're tracking work. The main thing is that really we want to focus on traceability back up to the firm goals. We want to get away from the feature factory mentality, or just the perception where people throw things over the fence and we just do them as a technology organization. And there's no real link back to firm goals or why we're doing it. So maintaining this traceability gives everybody ownership over the work that they're doing. And it's really had a positive impact on our culture. So this is one thing too that's been new for us right now. It's trying to organize all of the work, because we do get a number of requests from our various business units, what we should work on first, and then also assessing that, should we sunset some things? Should we stop working on other things that are no longer the highest priority to us? So that's really what we're trying to do. So if you look at the slide, we're trying to terminate sick initiatives. So basically things that the priorities have shifted, or we're no longer going to be able to deliver the value, or the value isn't a high priority for the firm anymore. So instead of just finishing those because that's what we said we would do, how can we pivot to do something more valuable for the firm? How can we make sure that we're working on the highest priority things all the time? The next one, so looking into the future, if we've got something that's longer than 3 months, or that we've estimated as longer 3 months, how can we split that out? How can we make it smaller so that we can deliver value faster? Then prioritize it. So looking at all of those things and making sure that we're prioritizing them against the most current business priorities, or against market conditions, or things like that. How are we making sure that, again, most valuable thing, how do we make sure that we're doing that all the time? And that's really where our focus is. So making sure that the teams are constantly working on the highest value item. And then all of those things go into reprioritizing our roadmaps, which happen quarterly for us. Next slide. So this will give you a view of what our end-to-end portfolio Kanban looks like. Each of our own individual business units is or will be in the future using something like this to help organize our work. So this functions 2 ways. One, it helps us organize everything, making sure that there's a central location where if anyone has any questions about what's coming up or what our priorities are, it's self-service. The other function it has is it allows us to gather metrics. So we're using Jira as a way to track all of this. We're able to get average time to value. We're able to show how long things are sitting in one status and really see where our bottlenecks are in our process, so that we can continually improve and get better. But as you can see, our on-ramp will be our 2022 roadmap. As things are introduced, they start on the left, and the further right that you get, that basically means that there's more details that have been added, that people are going through another layer of refinement. We're estimating things. We're making sure that the team is aware. We're looping in more system or subject matter experts, so that they can give their opinions to make sure that we're not making any assumptions. So the next slide, this is really the way that we've started to manage that on-ramp. So for every new proposal that comes in, instead of going through a whole project plan that we used to do and have a number of meetings, we get everybody into a room and we collaborate using this canvas. So as you can see, it may be small, but we talk about the vision. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with? What we say is, if you get trapped in an elevator with our CEO and he asks you what you're working on, what's your 30-second pitch? Why is this important? What value does it bring to the firm? And then, I'm not going to go through all of those, but we talk about success criteria, inputs, dependencies, outputs. Let's start breaking down the work into chunks so that we can figure out what sequence these need to go in and things like that. So really the idea is to stop starting things and to start finishing. And by doing this, it really allows us to focus on those initiatives that are been high prioritized. We're going to get all of that information and then really take it to the next step, which is bringing the teams in and actually implementing this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hisham to talk through our Agile governance.
Thanks, John. Okay, what do you think? Can I share?
I think so. I've disabled the whiteboard, so we'll try.
Let's give it a shot.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, let me see. Let me just pull it up. Sorry, guys. All right, so governance. So prior to the transformation, our governance mainly centered on projects. So think, we had these big, large 12 to 18 month projects. And so our governance was really kind of project-based steering committees, right? Where we would talk about status and scope and, your traditional kind of metrics and view on kind of the project world. But again, 12, 18 month type projects and really large kind of steering committee meetings. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with those. Tons of PowerPoint and just a lot of talk about status, right? As it pertains to that one specific project. Our governance was also centered on funding projects, right? So we had an investment table, monthly investment table forum, where project teams would basically come and present, here's my business case for this project, and the table would review and most of the time approve those dollars, right? And then the project team would be able to kind of kick that off and start working on that project. We've since then, right, after the transformation, we've transitioned away from all of that. So rather than having kind of your project-centric status meetings, we now have more kind of higher level domain type prioritization conversations, right? Where we're talking more, like Sean mentioned, about outcomes and value, and talking about prioritization of the upcoming work, right? So conversation now has shifted or has started to kind of shift away from kind of status to more kind of value and kind of prioritization. Still have a long way to go, but some of that is starting to kind of take hold. And then instead of funding projects, we've kind of completely kind of disbanded that funding model, and we now fund capacity, right? So we fund our individual kind of domain areas, or what you may call as, value streams. And then we kind of fund that capacity at the beginning of the year, instead of kind of funding kind of projects on a monthly basis. So that's really kind of a lot of kind of the shift in governance. Now, obviously, the benefit, right, is that there's a lot more collaboration between the kind of business and IT, right? So we're talking more about kind of the prioritization, new opportunities, what we need to get after, what we potentially need to stop. Because again, we're not working on those 12 to 18 month projects anymore. We're working on kind of these smaller increments of work, up to 3 months, right? That we can potentially kind of either deliver value quickly and or stop and pivot pretty quickly as well. So that prioritization, as Carlyle priorities change and firm direction or segment priorities kind of shift, the team and the domain is able to kind of shift as well. Just a high overview of the overall kind of governance model. So if you think about it, at the portfolio view, we're now getting into more of a rhythm of holding these big group planning sessions, or what we call our quarterly planning workshops. So every single domain or segment, we have around 5 or 6 of them. We help facilitate those sessions, right? And the idea is that we're looking at the next quarter, right? So we're retrospecting kind of what worked at a domain level for what didn't work over last quarter, but then really spending most of our time thinking about kind of the next upcoming quarter. What priority should we get after? What needs to potentially shift? How do we want to size the work or refine the work? So a lot more kind of operational, kind of tactical, but it's great because it's an opportunity to kind of bring the entire area, right? The entire domain, whether it's IT folks or product owners or whoever, just kind of at the table and kind of everybody opportunity to kind of collaborate. Also at that level is kind of our segment or domain meetings. And this is really where the segment means monthly, and I kind of touched on this in the subsequent slide, to kind of talk about a progress from a value perspective and things that we need potentially to kind of prioritize for the upcoming quarter. And then, your more team level stuff, which is your more traditional Agile type rituals, as many of you know. Again, these are literally the 2 sessions I just touched on. These replaced, just to be a bit more specific. So this first one up there really replaced what we used to have. We used to have a legacy one portfolio review meeting, right? So where all project teams, all project managers would come, and all different stakeholders would come to one meeting every month, where we would literally just go through each and every different project, and we would jump into kind of more specifics around any project that was in amber or red or what have you. We've kind of disbanded that portfolio review, and we've kind of now shifted that onus to the different domains. And again, this is the monthly meeting that they then have, which again is less status based, right? More kind of value centric based, but really thinking about kind of past quarter, but then more so looking forward, what do we need to get after? And then the big room planning sessions, which I just kind of mentioned, have been awesome. I mean, just tons of value here from a collaboration standpoint. Again, a lot of us are remote today, right? So we look at this meeting as an opportunity for people to come into the office and kind of collaborate and kind of see each other, and which is, again, always important as well, just from an overall kind of team morale perspective. So it's been very beneficial. Metrics. Actually, Sean, I'm going to have you speak to some of these metrics, but at a high level, listen, we're becoming more, we're transitioning to become more and more kind of a metrics kind of based organization. There's tons of metrics out there, and we've struggled a little bit to kind of define what are the metrics that we potentially need to get after. You know, I think obviously you have your traditional kind of burn up, burn down metrics that we all know about, but for us, where we settled was really around some of these metrics here, the goal OKR kind of metrics, like how are we doing against our goals? Are we making progress from an overall kind of value perspective? The say do, how predictable are we? And really the enterprise team health, right? So like, how are we doing against all our rituals? How's team morale? Are things kind of getting better or not? And Sean has done an awesome job here. So I'd like for him to kind of just jump in and talk a little bit about some of the work that he's put in.
Yeah, so thanks, Hisham. So looking through these, I mean, for the goals and the OKRs, it's really making sure that we have that unifying message coming down to the team so that everybody understands why their work is important. What we found in the past and what, you know, we've read and seen with other companies is that when you don't have that kind of connective layer, people either go off and do their own thing, and they, you know, because there's no unifying message, or they don't feel tied to any of the work that they're doing, which leads to a lower morale. And especially in a remote culture that we have right now, we want to make sure that people feel as connected as possible. And so this is just one way to do it. So we have right now the ability to take a user story and basically trace it all the way back up to a firm goal. For some of our more mature teams, we're trying to get you know, all of our other teams there. It is a journey, but really that's the important part too, so that everybody understands that the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis is impacting the firm in a positive way. So that's kind of the goals and the OKRs. So we've got our goals, kind of how we're going to do that. Those end up on the roadmap, and that's the traceability. For the say do, we do those at two levels. We do that at our quarterly level. So looking at our capabilities, how many of those capabilities did we deliver? How many do we say that we were going to do? And how many do we actually do? That helps us gauge capacity. So we try to stay away from these large capacity planning documents where we're getting various percentages from people, just because we wanted to reduce the overhead. And those change so often that, you know, they're not correct. We try to basically use the yesterday's weather format at the quarter level and at the sprint level to see, okay, how many did we complete last quarter? How many stories did we complete last sprint? Is that a realistic projection into the future? You know, can we hold ourselves to that same standard? So we're comparing those quarter over quarter and sprint over sprint, and working with our teams to make sure that they understand what the metrics mean. And also, if you're, you know, overcommitting, under delivering, back off your commits for a little bit. Try to get to 100%. Or actually, right now we're trying to get to 85%, just because there is some wiggle room for us within our sprints. But at our quarter level, let's try to get to 100%, and then move on from there. Let's not try to overload our teams. And then finally, the enterprise team health. This has really been a survey. So really sending out surveys to team members, no more than 5 questions, just really quick. If it takes more than 90 seconds, it's too long, but just, you know, general questions on, do you feel engaged? Do you feel like you know, are a valued member of the team? Would you recommend this team to a close friend who's looking for a job? Those would be the metrics that we're using to gauge team health and tracking those over time. So the last thing I'll say on this is data points in time are good, but trend data is so much better, because then you're able to actually see what's going on in the underlying things with the data. And that's what we're focusing on right now. Consistency for data reporting and data gathering, and then being able to show how that's trending over time to tell a story. And so that's what our primary focus has been for the last few months on data and metrics gathering. So Hisham, I'll hand it off back to you.
Thank you, Sean.